right? Like it's very, very strange. Telegram CEO is arrested in France, and we've got to talk about that. The rail strike appears to be over, and we're going to start there. And I haven't seen any comments at all from the CPC about that. And I think that's weird. Why aren't they talking about this? Don't you think it's a big deal? Anyway, there's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start with the CP or the CN and the other one, rail strike, lockout. Gov.exe says Labour Minister Steve McKinnon basically admits the only reason why Liberals forced back to work legislation of rail workers is because the US government told him to. Canada is not a serious country. We were told what to do by China and the United States. And, 25,000 rail cars go across that border a day, according to the food professor. So it seems like, yeah, they'd have a say. It's also weird. The reporter says, was it the US who kind of pushed you into this? And he said, well, we got a call, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know that he says in this 2 minutes, and we won't listen to the whole 2 minutes, maybe we will, but I don't know that he says unequivocally that the reason we did this is because the United States calls us. I don't know. I think that that's a little bit of color added by the Twitter account there, gov.exe. But yeah, he does talk about being in contact with the United States and how this is impactful, and how I find it interesting, though, that he doesn't deal with the question. He pivots to, yeah, everybody has labor issues. Everybody has to deal with that. Everybody has to blah, 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 blah. But it's not dealing with the issue, right? Like the question is pointed and specific, and he doesn't answer this pointed, specific question. He talks in generalities, trying to dodge around it. Does that make sense? Here's just a little bit of this.
Any message at all from the U.S. government in terms of its concerns around the economic issues involving that kind of cross-continental?
Well, let's not pretend that the U.S. government doesn't also face the same kinds of circumstances. Look, we've had over a decade of low inflation, low interest rates, and workers in Canada and in the United States are looking for raises. And if we want to have a high-wage economy, and we very much do want to have a high-wage economy, we are going to have tensions at bargaining tables across all sectors. That is also true in the United States. So my discussions with my American counterpart and others in the U.S. was really more about comparing notes on, confronting the very phenomenon that I just described.
No pressure to get them back to work.
Well, they understand very well, of course, that we have substantially the same system of collective bargaining that they do, and we honor the rights of unions in that process. And we were comparing notes. Of course, we are tied literally and spiritually to our Mexican and to our American friends when it comes to commerce. And that,
we share a border with the Americans.
That is a reality. That is a daily reality. That's how a lot of Canadians earn their paychecks. So, of course, we're going to be coordinating and comparing notes and trading lessons on how to deal with these things.
Yes, pressure.
No, I didn't say pressure. I said.
So you're saying yes?
No, I'm saying that we were comparing notes.
I'm saying I'm not going to answer your question. The other part of this whole thing, the whole saying Mexico first is so ideologically Canadian at this point in time. It's ridiculous. We share a border with the United States. The United States. Mexico is a lot more religious than Canada. A lot more, by orders of magnitude more religious. Like, you could talk to them intelligently about religion. Whereas in Canada, if you started talking about religion, you'd end up talking about LGBT issues and a rainbow flag in a church, and whether or not the United Church is actually a church. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. I'm medium kidding. But honestly, what? Mexico and our United States people that we're spiritually aligned with? What part of the United States are you spiritually aligned with there, Minister? Come on, honestly. And sure, we can be trading partners. We can be tightly interwoven because of our geography, Mexico, and have rail cars back and forth. Sure, like fine. We can be tightly interwoven. And somebody can say, was there pressure from this business partner of ours? And instead of answering the question, they say, well, businesses have lots of pressure. Lots of pressure on businesses all the time. Pressure, pressure, pressure. So you're saying that there was pressure put on you by the United States? No, I didn't say that. I said businesses have pressure. So what the hell are you talking about then? Can you answer the question? Are you kidding me right now? So the whole thing is absolutely ridiculous. And trying to pretend that this wasn't an avoidable crisis that was created by Canada. And yeah, probably the United States picked up the phone and said, hey, idiots, fix this, or we're never going to do business with you again and we'll fix this and cut you out. And like, that's probably not good. And I'm speculating, but there was probably pressure where the minister was tap dancing away, right? Here's the food professor. He says, breaking CN, CPKC resume railway service as the work stoppage ends. Farmers can breathe again for now. And the food professor continues, the work stoppage concluded just after midnight this morning following a decision by the Canadian Industrial Relations Board issued on Saturday. The decision ordered both companies and their workers to resume operations in preparation for binding arbitration. For farmers and the agri-food sector, recovery from the 4-day shutdown will take 4 weeks. So that's a long, long time. And I said, I heard the only reason that the Canadian government acted was because of pressure from the United States. Without that, Justin Trudeau would not have forced them back to work and the work stoppage would still be on. So that's interesting. And the food professor said, how could Ottawa not be pressured by Washington? Right? The food professor is being honest. Why can't the minister be honest? 25,000 rail cars, according to the food professor, go through that border daily. Daily. That's a huge amount. And yeah, I agree with him. How could the United States not pressure him? If you're Nabisco, right? If you're a cracker company and you look at your stores of flour and you say to yourself, we need the farming product yesterday. Like, we've got crackers to make, for crying out loud, right? And Nabisco calls up whoever, and whoever calls up whoever, and pressure happens, right? People know people, and they will put that pressure on the people they know to get this fixed as much as they can. And yeah, that's going to happen. So why can't we be honest about it? It's something else, because nobody's being honest about anything. Cheryl, let's talk about our grab bag of governance today. And Cheryl says the U.S. is increasing pressure on Trudeau with a surprise visit. Surprise! Hello, surprise! They want Trudeau to up the military spending as rapidly as humanly possible. We spend a ton of money on Ukraine. We spend a ton of money on all of these foreign wars. And instead of funding NATO to the appropriate amount and acting through NATO, we are acting on our own to fund these, I don't know, special projects that seem like MP's special project that seem to pay out Hunter Biden or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how it all works, but this is supposed to be national security level stuff, and Hunter's supposed to be real smart. So it's weird that Canada acts outside of NATO, spends billions of dollars in Ukraine, and then gets slapped by our NATO partners for not spending enough on defense. Weird, right? Weird. Like, I wonder what they're doing with all that money, because it doesn't sound like they're doing anything for defense with it, right? Despite sending it into this NATO conflict against Russia. It's so weird. It's such a weird kind of situation. So the U.S. is surprise visiting us, on the weekend when the rail blockade was avoided, because not because of pressure from the United States, but you would also call this pressure. This would be pressure, right? Oh, hi, Ambassador. How are you? Right? Gov.exe says, Steve McKinnon says, after a refreshing summer break, he's excited to get back to work by making life more affordable for Canadians and boosting the economy with more government spending. I don't know about you, but I don't know if I can handle much more government help. Yeah, because the government help doesn't actually help. It's inflationary and harmful. Here's Steve McKinnon again.
The cabinet and obviously very soon the caucus will gather after a very refreshing summer of meeting constituents across the country. And I know that we're talking to a lot of constituents who appreciate a lot of the things that have been put in place: childcare, dental care for seniors. But we also want to make sure that we continue this economic optimism that we're starting to feel in the country, with inflation coming down, with interest rates coming down, and a lot of expansion and investment going on in the country that should give every region of this country a lot of optimism and a lot of things to think about as we go into what's obviously going to be a very highly charged political year. But we stand foursquare behind the Prime Minister and look forward to, I know, presenting Canadians with the kind of contrast that they're going to be looking for next year.
I mean, the Liberals and the NDP are absolutely cratering in the polls. Brian Lilly says, let's face it, Jagmeet Singh is a political failure. His backing of Trudeau is hurting what credibility he has left and what credibility the NDP has left. His party should be rising in the polls as Trudeau sinks, and they aren't. Here's why. And so, well, I mean, the reason why is because they're supporting the Liberals. That's That's why they're as much to blame for the failure of this government as the Liberals are, and that's why they're not increasing as the Liberals decrease, because they're as responsible. So the Roy Green Show says, the question, why is Jagmeet Singh heaping dirt on Justin Trudeau on social media but not rescinding the deal Jagmeet Singh has with Justin Trudeau? Because come the federal election next year, Trudeau's Liberals and Singh's NDP will have merged into a far left, huge government one-party crowd. Do you think? I don't know. I mean, maybe, but Jagmeet Singh loses, but he might be ousted as party leader and he might be a cabinet minister in Justin Trudeau's, I don't know, final nail in the coffin of Canada tour. So maybe, but also maybe people in the NDP would allow anybody who wants to cross the floor to be a Liberal, and they would retain their party and, I don't know, maybe fix it. But it's not likely, right? Fixing a political party is difficult, especially when it's been co-opted by communists, which the federal NDP has been co-opted by communists. And I think probably all of the NDP entities across the country, Nenshi and the rest of them have been co-opted. But I think all of our politics are co-opted by communists at one level or another. So that's, I mean, yeah, unfortunate, but true. CBC is reporting this as Trudeau cabinet meets Liberal MPs look for signs of change following by-election loss. So this was August 25th, which is yesterday. And it says multiple Liberal MPs told CBC News that more needs to be done to salvage the party's electoral hopes. So the Liberals know as well that they're not popular and they may stand four square behind the Prime Minister, but nobody else does, right? Everybody's abandoning Prime Minister Trudeau because, well, he's been a complete and utter disaster. That's why. Anyway, here's just part of this article. It says CBC News spoke to 6 MPs who say they want to see cabinets agree on several measures, a major cabinet shuffle. Okay. Who, right? Like you're going to move Garrettson to immigration? Give me a break. Simplified public messaging. The simplified public messaging, we get it, guys. You hate us and you'd rather we were completely replaced. We understand you guys. We get it. You don't need to simplify the messaging. Loud and clear. We got it. An effort to market the Liberals as a team. Justin and Jagmeet. I mean, that's the team that they've been marketing as, and a more aggressive communications campaign contrasting the party with the Conservatives. Again, people see what the contrast is, and they're not interested in what the Liberals NDP have to offer. So it's interesting that they're going in this direction. Here's an example of Doug Ford being just an awful premier and somebody who should not be trusted to continue to govern Ontario. Pastor Hildebrand, I showed you this yesterday. He paid $65,000 yesterday and $274,000 earlier to pay off the COVID fines. And he said, some have asked why we paid this fine. We took this all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada and they declined to hear our appeal, leaving no further recourse. The choices we had left was to not pay and lose our property or give to Caesar what is Caesar's. We chose the latter. So there you go. They had no choice, and that's that. So that's pretty terrible. Would an incoming new premier come in and be able to rescind that? I don't know. But Doug Ford should have done something to prevent that, because that's ridiculous. Red Pill Rick, let's talk about the economy before we talk about the invasion and housing. Red Pill Rick says, since 2023, credit card debt is up 20%, while retail sales are down 0.7%. 46% of Canadians aren't paying off their credit card debt. 23% of them have an outstanding balance of 80% of their limit. Consumers aren't consuming. They're in a debt trap, all part of the cycle. And somebody asked they said, what happens if you zoom out and take the credit card debt as far back as it goes? Is it like our national debt, which took off after 1974? And he says, I don't have back to 1974. I only have back to 1990. Doesn't look like it's gone up this fast as far back as the data goes. Not a good sign. So you can see the gentle slope from 1990 to 1998, and then you see a reduction actually. And then 2000s kind of takes off for credit card debt from 15 billion, right? And it stayed steady under 15 billion from 1990 to 2000. And then we were like, 15 billion, we can do better than that. So we took it all the way up to around 90 billion. And then it had a back off to around 75 billion, but the graph's kind of murky. Like the lines between 90 billion and 75 billion, it doesn't seem big enough. So I don't take it all with a grain of salt. But then after the bottoming out at 75 billion, we've been on a rip to 105. $105 billion. So, I mean, you know, the credit card debt's not good, and it seems like people are in a debt trap, and we've never had this debt increase that quickly in 30 years, right? More. So worrying. These are red flags that should not be ignored, but are being ignored. Sue says, strangely, I don't see the Liberal accounts mass posting this like they did with the inflation rate. Almost 474,000 people are receiving regular employment insurance in Canada. That's welfare. According to the latest data, that's a 10% increase compared to the same time last year, and they're citing CTV News as their source. That's a negative number. You don't want to see that if you're running things, right? Like that's an indication that you're bad at running things, right? It's worrying when you see the numbers go in that direction. Matt says, why? Please tell me why. Why do the 3 billion people who live here, right? Africa and East Asia, have the automatic right to move to tiny Ireland, population 5 million, and to be fed, housed, and supported by the Irish people? Why did the Irish vote for this? Nobody. Let's make sure that everybody understands, because I think that most of my viewers understand this, but I'm going to say it again just to make sure we're all on the same page. Nobody voted for this. The elections are rigged. We've been manipulated. We are in the process of being manipulated. It is to the point where you can't even wave a British flag in front of a migrant center, and the migrant centers that they're protecting here are going to become our public buildings soon, because the public buildings are going to house migrants, you understand, right? So anyway, the migrant centers that they're protecting, the people that they're protecting, any kind of criticism of, they're throwing people in jail for waving the flags, that kind of stuff is coming to Canada. That's what they're doing. We didn't vote for this. Nobody voted for this. We are being invaded. This is an act of aggression. Nobody seems to understand this. We didn't permit this. Nobody said, yeah, let's import enough people to destroy our country. Hey guys, let's genocide ourselves. Cool. I was playing with this gun and I put it in my mouth and I just started pulling the trigger a bunch. It's super fun. It's a great game. Like, nobody's doing that. Very few people are doing that. I've seen movies with people doing that, but I think, and like fictional accounts. But again, the more I learn about magic and manipulating people without you realizing you're being manipulated, if you inject an idea like that, nobody actually really needs to do it. People just need to believe that people did it. And then it becomes possible for them. And then maybe people actually do it. It's weird. It's a weird, weird thing. Anyway, nobody's voted for that. Nobody wants that. And yet this aggressive act is being hidden, obfuscated through that kind of messaging. It's wrong. It's erroneous. Polyev is going after Justin Trudeau on housing. He says Justin Trudeau promised the number of chronically homeless shelter users will be reduced by 50%. Today, the number of people without a home in housing Minister Sean Fraser's own province is up by more than 600%. Not worth the cost. Signed to build homes, not bureaucracy. I would sign. I wouldn't sign, because these things are just collecting your information to fundraise off you later. But anyway, I would support somebody who said, stop the invasion migration. Stop it. Defend Canada, retain Canada's cultural individuality, cultural uniqueness, and defend our country, right? Stop invasion migration. That's what I'd support. Build the homes for who? The invaders? No thanks. No thanks. I don't want my tax dollars going to that. Pierre Poilievre says today Trudeau repeats the same housing promise he made in 2015, 2017, 23, 24. A decade of promises that one day in the future he will build homes on federal lands, and still nothing done. So Poilievre's going to come in and do that. He's going to come in and build homes on federal lands, just like Justin Trudeau is promising. WEF plan, right? Problem, reaction, solution. And the problem is there's too many people here. We can't house everybody. The reaction is we have to fix this problem, and the solution is build more houses. But we should stop the invasion migration and deport people who don't belong here. Anyway, he's not worth the cost. Instead, he doubled housing costs with the worst housing inflation in the G7. So yeah, going after him, it's fertile ground, but he's going to build houses and he's not going to solve the problem. That's what's going to happen, unfortunately. Dr. Moffat says at the end of 2024, we'll only be through 4 years of this decade. Despite that, we'll have added more people to our population than we did in any of the 4 previous decades. So that's not good, right? So you've got each color is how many people were added during the decade. So this is just one decade. And so like the blue color, one of the blue colors is 1981 to 1990. The yellow color is 90 to 2000. Green is 2000 to 2010. And the other blue is 2011 to 2020. And then 21 to 2030 is already where 3 of the decades are at the end of the decade. And we're only in 2024. You see? So like 3 of the decades are ended at 3.5 million or 3 million, around there, 3 million. And we're there already in 24. So we've got 6 more years of migration to go. How high will we get, right? Just don't worry though, Justin Trudeau will build Soviet-style housing for you, right? Ripson says, when are people going to wake up? You can't simultaneously condemn Soviet-era Russia while also implementing its policies, you morons. And Mario says, Trudeau, we're going to build. We've got lands and houses to build. Here we go. Here's Justin.
Here's something we can all agree on. We need more housing in Canada, but that the government should...
We need less people coming to Canada.
...step up and make sure that housing gets built. That's where some people disagree. Take federal lands, land that's owned by the federal government that isn't being used anymore. The Conservative Party leader wants to sell it all off to make a quick buck. That does nothing for you. The federal government owns tons of land in cities and towns across the country. You could build a lot of homes on those lands, so that's what we're going to do. We're offering up that public land for housing. And we're not just going to sell it all to developers, we're going to long-term lease it. See, by leasing the land, we get to work with communities to make sure that home builders are building the right homes you can afford. We've got land, we got lots of houses to build, so that's exactly what we're going to do.
But it's not a solution to the problem. It is just making things worse. Here is Dan. He says, go F yourself. And this is from 2015. It says, Trudeau promises affordable housing for Canadians. So 10 years of the same promise. People are not believing this nonsense. Naya says, the government just gave $5 billion to municipalities and developers and no extra houses got built. Hand over your wallets if you think the government is going to be more efficient and productive than private industry. This is battery plant-sized boondoggle. So lots of billions of dollars handed over for nothing whatsoever. CTV News is reporting the same. Feds seek to convert dozens of government properties for affordable housing. I'll have a bit more details in just a sec. Rex says, how does any media still repeat these old recycled Trudeau lies after 10 years? I think probably there's going to be action on this. It's been 10 years. I mean, it seems about time for them to get started, right? Like, former military bases, Canadian or Canada Post sites, and federal office buildings are among properties included in public lands bank. The federal government has added 56 properties to a new public lands bank of locations that are suitable for long-term leases so developers can build affordable housing. Like, when I say I think there's going to be action, I don't support action. I hope that there isn't any action. I hope that this is just an announcement and nobody leases these things and nobody builds on these things and it's just kind of left to languish. But Poilievre's going to come in and try and do this too. Like, he's coming in with WEF policies that he wants to get done. Trudeau's not stealing this from Poilievre. They both came up with this and they're both workshopping it and they want to get it done. Either one of them, both of them, after the next election. So Housing Minister Fraser made the announcement today in Halifax just ahead of a 3-day cabinet retreat intended to prepare for the upcoming fall sitting of Parliament. Former military bases, Canada Post sites, and federal office buildings are among the properties currently included in the Public Lands Bank, many of which were previously set aside for sale as they're no longer in use. The new plan is to offer most of them for long-term lease, not a one-time sale, to keep lands in public hands and ensure housing built on them remains affordable. Bull poop. The current list includes properties in 28 municipalities and 7 provinces, but will grow over time through an ongoing review of underused or vacant federal land and buildings. So they are going to use this to penetrate these small towns, and that's not good. Joe Warmington is talking about this as well. He's responding to Sue Miller. Sue says, thank you, Prime Minister Trudeau, for actually doing something to help out working Canadians. Unlike the Conservatives who only criticize and whine, no policies at all in their rhetoric. And Joe Warmington says federal housing camps, he says, our leases floated here by Justin Trudeau will not help Canadians new to country or born here because it's not home ownership, but an endless cycle of rent in government housing like countries have, or like communist countries have. No pride of ownership means no prosperity. I saw, and I'm sorry that I don't have it for you. I looked for it, but I couldn't find it even on my website. I thought I tagged it appropriately because I thought this is going to come up again. There was a guy, he was First Nations, and he said, listen, the model for the whole world is what they already have running in Canada for First Nations people. He said the First Nations model looks really good. You can sell it really well to people because they don't understand the trap they're entering. But the trap they're entering is essentially what is being laid out by Joe Warmington here. Essentially, no ownership means no pride of anything. So people, they get free skidoos. Okay, so First Nations people get free skidoos. There's a program every year that spends, I don't know, $10 million on skidoos or something like that. And they give them brand new sleds every year. So when the sleds run out of gas, they don't care about them. It's not like, oh man, I really like this sled. I saved up for this sled. I've got to take care of this sled. A new one's coming. It'll probably be gassed up in the spring. So they just leave it on the lake. And when the lake thaws in the springtime, the sled goes through and there's a bunch of sleds on the bottom of the lake. And well, who cares? It's not ours. We didn't pay for it. I mean, it's ours, but we didn't pay for it, so we don't care. So that nightmare, and the gentleman, it wasn't Joe Warmington, it was somebody else. It was a First Nations guy, and he was talking in his car, and he seemed very earnest, and it was a good long one, but it was like 2 minutes long, back when Twitter 1.0 didn't have long videos. So it was basically laying out the similarities between what they want to roll out, the 15-minute cities, and First Nation reserves. And he was basically saying they're going to try and put everybody onto a First Nation reserve model. And I thought, yeah, maybe. And I think even more plausible now. So if you've got that video, send it to me, please, and I'll play it on the show. And I'll more appropriately mark it on CanadaReport.co. Wall Street Silver says, so what is the impact of all of this immigration? So we are throwing caution to the wind. We're importing anybody who wants to come here from Africa or East Asia, anybody at all. Everybody is welcome. It doesn't matter what your ideology. In fact, if you want to, if you're a Gaza refugee and you want to kill certain people, we've got a protest you could join. You know, like there's all sorts of things going on in Canada that have become concerning. But in England, they're a few years ahead of us. They have been subject to these in this invasion for longer, and it's been more targeted, more Islamic, more Middle Eastern. And so here's what's happened in England. This is coming to Canada. Like, I hope I'm wrong, but it seems unlikely that Canada will dodge this bullet unless we drastically change our policies in the short term. And I mean, like, stop immigration, deport people who don't belong in this country, have stringent requirements to extend any kind of stay, because this is what happens if we don't do that. And I don't think we're going to do that. It says England has officially become a third world country. I don't know why they have to put this music up. There's burned out ambulances. There's other ambulances, fire everywhere, debris, trash everywhere. There's a girl standing on her phone, looking at her phone. But what's happening is purposeful destruction of the West. Order from chaos. Okay? Here is a guy from Ireland with, what's her name? Lauren Chen. And these guys are talking about what's going on in Canada and what's going on in Ireland. And like, we're going to listen to about 2 minutes of this. He says what's going on in England is a little bit more difficult to deal with because of the generational immigrants. You've got 3 or 4 generations of people who have grown up in England and they consider themselves, you know, British Pakistanis or British whatever. And you can't undo that, right? Like you can't undo that. It's the same problem Israel has now, because if you go back not very long in history, 70, 80 years, that's like 1 generation, 1.5 generations. There wasn't a Western or non-Islamic population in that area, right? And then a couple of wars happened and bingo, bango, bongo, 1948, this is our land now. And then if you can't respond, and they couldn't respond then as that gets entrenched with people who grew up understanding that this is your land, now you have to deal with that. Like, now it's not as cut and dry as you never lived here. You lived in another place. Then you came here 2 years ago and decided to live here, and you've been a criminal ever since. So we're going to get rid of you now. Go away. It's not that simple. It's much more complicated than that, right? So that's what's being talked about here. And in Canada, we're dealing with a similar complication. Can we deal with this complication? Yes, of course we could deal with this complication in a humane way, in a way that is amicable for most people, right? Like the leader of what country A tells the leader of country B, we're going to be sending all of the people back, and here's the way it's going to happen, and you do it in phases. There was a whole write-up, blah, blah, blah. Yes, you can do it. It is difficult, but not difficult. It's only difficult for like 10% of the holdouts. And like, you could deal with that. It is absolutely a solvable problem. Okay, here's this.
It seems like there are entire small Irish towns now that essentially look, I don't mean to be rude, but like third world areas, based on not only the demographics, but of course, like a lot of the cultural problems that come with having a population from the third world, whether that's the trash, the lounging about, and, you know, looking at Canada, which has had a similar explosion in immigration. You know, frankly, Canada's a bit different. There doesn't seem to be as much fight in Canadians, unfortunately, as it does. It looks like the Irish have in them. Consistently, polling in Canada has shown that people want less immigration. We don't want more, certainly, but despite that, many Canadians still vote for the party that openly says that they want to bring in more people. But honestly, and I feel like this is the case with the UK as well. Even if all immigration were to stop right now, I feel like the landscape has changed so much that unless there is simultaneous deportations of people who were given like temporary asylum, the country is not coming back. So is there that similar sense in Ireland that things perhaps may be too far gone to ever reach where the country used to be?
Well, we're definitely in an earlier stage of it than the UK in terms of, you know, the UK as, you know, it had like waves of immigration from the Caribbean after the Second World War, and then 60s and 70s was people coming from the colonies, and there was a lot of South Asian immigration. And so you do get immigrant groups in the UK that like they've been there 2-3 generations. So, you know, that's quite difficult in terms of if you were talking about reversing that. But in Ireland, it's been so recent, and that's part of why there's a backlash is, you know, they didn't really boil the frog as slowly as they did in countries like the UK, where people had a long time to kind of get used to some of this. And yeah, like you said, I mean, I saw footage just yesterday, actually, where they're planting like busloads of these immigrants into a small village in Connemara. And it's like an Irish-speaking village, and you hear the locals that are standing around recording this speaking Irish, totally baffled. So it's very bad optically, because it does bring back that memory and you know, the kind of folk stories of plantations in Ireland where, like, traditionally this has been a weapon that's used, is to change the demographics. Because I mean, you know, you look at somewhere like Israel, Palestine, right? You can conquer territory, but if the people there don't accept you, don't see you as of their stock, they're going to resist you. If you change the demographics, if you put your people in that area, that's a difficult thing to reverse. And that's the history of so much conflict on the island of Ireland, is these plantations changing the demographics. And so that is kind of activating something in people, I think, to see it just so upfront that they are just, you know, planting these busloads of people.
So that is what these government buildings are going to be used for. That is the point. It is meant to inject these people into the places where they're not going. They're going to Toronto. They're going to Richmond, BC. They're going to Brampton. They're going to enclaves where there are other people like them. Why? Because that's what people do. They like other people like them. They want other people. If their child is going to marry somebody else, they want to be assured that that family ascribes to the same kind of general ideas and principles and values that they ascribe to. So you go and find your kids a mate at the church that you all belong to, or something to that effect. And that's been watered down to the point of uselessness. And that's a weapon, historical weapon. It's been used as a weapon. And these plantations are used to change the demographics so that if there's resistance, well, like, that's racist. Right? And look at what's going on. Here's another example. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful